Whether you're looking for a rent-to-HMO or rent-to-serviced accommodation, the challenge is always there. In this video, I want to share with you the 5 reasons as to why your letting agent will want to give you these deals. If you're watching my videos for the first time, my name is Luke, and on this channel, I share with you my 7+ years of property investing experience to ultimately get you further, faster in your own property investing journey. When the market's really strong and buoyant, as it is now, demand is sky high for rental property. The rents are very high. Someone who's looking to rent can really struggle with why a letting agent is going to give them the property when they've got a queue of people waiting outside the door, ready to snap up that property. I get so many messages from people from all over trying to find those deals who are really struggling. Really, the key learning that I can share with you here is about putting yourselves in the shoes of the letting agent as to why they would let you rent the property, and there are so many reasons why they should, and in this video I want to give you the 5 key ones. The first reason is you're a multi-buyer. What does a multi-buyer even mean? Well, if we consider a regular tenant, someone that's going to be an individual or maybe a family that's renting from a landlord, they'll be renting that property from the agent to make it their home. What they're certainly not going to be doing is coming back for another one because they've already got their home, unless they're looking to move. Each time an agent lists the property on the market, there's a number of things they need to do. They need to assess the property, take photographs, take measurements in terms of room sizes, list it on all the property portals. They might have a floor plan they're doing, that's if they're not too lazy, and then they've got to write a description. They're going to be taking calls for inquiries, assessing those inquiries, booking viewings, doing the viewings, finding someone suitable, process an application, and hopefully that's when the job's done. Whereas if they choose to work with you, firstly, this whole process that they need to go through, they only need to do it once, because they'll vet you once. They'll make the decision they want to work with you, and as long as you can prove yourself that you're going to deliver time and time again, the next time they get a property, you're going to come back again and take on another property from them. Hence, you're a multi-buyer. You're not just going to be taking on one property from them, you'll be back several times. Ultimately, what that means for them is they save time and money. They don't need to take photographs, relist the property, take those measurements. They don't need to go through the whole letting process. They just need to contact you and say, we've got something available, do you have time to come and view it? And believe me, when I tell you, that becomes easier and easier, because as that relationship develops, that agent finds it so easy. They're just constantly throwing deals at you, probably to a point where you can't even take them all on, and you may even consider sourcing these deals to other people. The second reason is that a letting agent is going to make more money from you than a regular tenant. Back in 2019, the government introduced the tenant fees ban, and ultimately what that meant was that tenants are no longer paying fees for the majority of things that they would have paid for previously. Now, for most letting agents, that was quite a hit, and in fact, 1 of 4 agencies alone. Now those agencies still need to do the same amount of work that they used to pre-2019. However, what's happening post-2019 is that landlords are paying more of the cost than the tenant originally would have. However, none of this applies when we've got a commercial arrangement in place, and where you're not signing up to a standard AST, assured short hold tenancy agreement. That's when someone's occupying the property as their home. You will not be occupying it as your home, so these rules don't apply to you. Now that's great news for the agent because they can charge you, but you might be thinking, that means I've now got to pay. Absolutely, and the reason that's good news is because now they're incentivized to give you the deal versus someone else where they're not going to earn a fee out of it. So let's say a family moves into that property, they're not going to be earning any tenant fees out of that, whereas if you take on the property, they might charge you say £300 or £500 in fees, because they're going to have to process the application and set up the agreements for you. Now the reality is that's a cost to you. However, you should be earning more than that within your first month of getting up and running. Now, the agent likes working with you because they're earning a fee from you that they wouldn't ordinarily receive. And let's say over the course of a year, they introduce 10 properties to you and you take on those 10 properties. So that's 500 times 10, which is £5,000 in fees that they wouldn't have earned if they had let those properties to a regular family. Reason number 3 is they have to do less work and still get paid the same amount of money. So ordinarily, when a property is being let, and it's managed as well. What that means is the agent is looking for a suitable tenant to come into that property. Then they'll be managing the tenancy over that period of the lifetime of that tenancy. So for instance, they'll be collecting the rent, they'll be doing inspections on that property, dealing with any maintenance or repairs that need to be dealt with, and if there are any arrears, they'll be taking care of and looking after those things as well. Now when they choose to work with you, their workload is going to reduce. That's because you're going to be paying the rent on time. There's going to be very little maintenance repairs work that you're going to speak to the landlord about, because most of the minor things you're going to deal with yourself. From an inspection point of view, when they do their inspections again, the property is going to be in very good order because you'll be looking after it. You'll be there regularly with your cleaners to ensure that the property is in good order. Now, depending on the arrangement and the contractual agreement that you set up with the letting agent, it may be that you're dealing with the gas certificate, it may be that you're dealing with the repairs up to a certain level, but either way, essentially what it means is that the agent is probably going to be doing less work, so you're making their life much easier. And if the agent is doing the tenant find only, that means they're only going to be finding the tenant and then connecting them with the landlord and no longer being involved with the ongoing management. Then you revert back to reason number 2, because they can still charge you a fee where they're not going to be able to charge a fee to a family coming in. So it's still a win-win. Reason number 4 is the agent can offer a better service to their landlord by ensuring that there's no voids on their property. Ordinarily, when a family, for example, moves into a house, they might be there for say a year and a half, which tends to be around the norm, for example in our tenancies. But the point when the tenant moves out, it might be that the property needs a bit of work doing to it to refresh it, but also there's often a delay whilst one tenant moves out and the property is then prepared and remarketed to find a new tenant to move into the property. That might take a few weeks, it could even take a month, and that month is a loss to the landlord. That means they're not earning any money during that time. When you're taking the property on for say 3 or 5 years or even longer, what that means is there'll be no break in the income that the landlord's going to receive, and effectively it's a better proposition that the agent can put to the landlord by saying to the landlord, we have somebody here that's prepared to rent the property for a much longer period of time, meaning you're not going to get those voids during that time. Over the 7 years I've been doing this, what we've also found is when we return those properties back to the landlords, that they're in better condition than they were when we took them on in the first place. So it means that the landlord actually has to do less work to remarket those properties and find somebody else that might be willing to take them on. Often is the case that the landlord's quite happy with the arrangement. It's worked really well for them. They probably just want an increase in the rent, and if that's something fair that we can absorb and make it work for us, then that's something we'll certainly do. But there are occasions when we can't and we have to hand it back. What all of this means is, when the letting agent is speaking to the landlord about your proposition, that there won't be any voids during the period of your agreement, and also it's very likely that the property is in better condition when they hand it back, because you'll be looking after it. With our rent to HMOs, we have cleaners in there on a bi-weekly basis, keeping an eye on the property, making sure that it's in good order, they're kept clean and tidy, and notifying us of any maintenance or repairs that might need to be done. And in the serviced accommodation units that we have, whether the ones we own or the ones we rent on a rent-to-rent basis, we find the cleans in there much more frequently, several times a week sometimes. And again, it means that the properties are kept in very good order. Ultimately, what this means is, when your letting agent is speaking to the landlord about your proposition, you're in a much more stronger position. You're proposing a long-term rent that has minimal, if no voids, for say 3 or maybe even 5 years. The properties can be cleaned literally every week, if not even more frequently than that, but also maintained, and when handed back, probably in better condition. All in all, making it a strong and compelling proposition. The 5th and final reason is that your proposition to the landlord will mean that they have lower risk and better security. So how does that work? Well, most landlords, they want a tenant that's going to stay in the property, look after it and pay the rent on time, and when they leave, not have left any damage, but also, if there's a problem, that they can remove the tenant and be able to replace them quite quickly with another tenant. However, the reality is that landlords' rights are slowly being eroded away, and it's getting to the point where some landlords feel quite vulnerable when they have a tenant in their property. However, with your proposition as a commercial arrangement, the landlord is in a much stronger position, because essentially, for example, if you start paying rent, it's much easier to evict you from the property than it would be to evict somebody who lives in it as their home, because it could take months to get through court and get that tenant out. So it can be a painful process, but that means it's much easier for them, so it gives them more security. The risk is lower for them, so if you default on your rent, they can get the property back much quicker. They can also build clauses into the agreement that might be really important for them. So for example, if you're neglecting repairs, there's a lot of noise and parties late in the evening. In a normal tenancy, these can be quite difficult to enforce, whereas in this arrangement, it will be much easier for the landlord to get you out of the property, giving them much more security. There are lots of rent-to-rent opportunities out there in the market. The thing is, you need to get out there and find them. Many people stumble at the first hurdle, as you're standing just at the letting agent's door, not knowing what to say. I've just given you 5 compelling reasons why the agent should be working with you rather than, for example, letting to a family. What you need to do now is make sure you're getting out there, utilising this information. Feel free to pop in the comment section below how you get on with that. I'd love to know, and I'll do my best to read those comments and respond to all of them as well. As a token of my appreciation for you watching the video, I've also included a free rent-to-rent course in the description below. This course will help you further your education in rent-to-rent. Please remember to like and subscribe, and as always, I'll see you on the next one.